I am the king, Dre Mack. Super Bowl 57 is going to be one of the most exciting Super Bowls in history. No matter what happens, I win in this Super Bowl. Why? Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, this will be his third start in 5 years. Jalen Hurts, this will be his first appearance, but it won't be his last. I'm sure of that. What makes this more exciting for me is that these two African-American gentlemen is going to square off in front of millions and millions of people to represent themselves, their families, and black people all over the world. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that there have been plenty of black quarterbacks that came before them, that started in Super Bowls, that played in college championship games, that played in high school throughout America, played Jack Frost, played at every single level. But these are the first two in the history of this game to make it to the Super Bowl as starters against each other. I've been watching them, listening to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, well beyond his years, 24 years old, but he sounds like a 35-year-old veteran. He has respect of the room, respect of his linemen, respect of his receivers, skilled people, respect of the coaches, and the respect of the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, it goes without saying, the NFL MVP, two-time winner. Two-time winner. Regarded as one of the best players to ever play football. This is only his, fifth year, or the sixth year, technically. But he's already getting fitted for that gold jacket. Phenomenal, phenomenal players. But they wouldn't be there, they couldn't be there without walking in the pathways that was made for them by the black quarterbacks throughout history. This is Black History Month. So what I want to do is to remind you all of those great quarterbacks that paved the way for these two young gentlemen. We did a throwback. We're going to do a throwback, I should say, of our Black His Story that showcases the black quarterbacks of the professional football leagues that we've come to know now as the National Football League or the NFL. So I want you all to sit back and enjoy this history lesson about the black quarterback. And again, I am the king, Dre Mack. Are y'all ready for some football? Yeah, I know y'all ready for it. Y'all ready to party. Everybody's getting ready. Everybody from Pop Warner, high school football, college football, pro football, CFL, people out yard playing tag football, and you people out there that I know, my partners that's getting ready to do a little bit of that fantasy football. You're getting your players together. You're thinking about it. You're thinking how you're going to maneuver and make your moves. This year is your year. You're going to win a jackpot this year, right? You don't have to split the pot with nobody this year, right? Because you're going to be an outright winner. That's what we all think. I know you fantasy football players out there thinking about your quarterbacks right now. Oh, man, if I just can get Patrick Mahomes, give me Russell Wilson. And while you at it, second stringer would be Lamar Jackson. You wish you had it like that, right? Man, but this right here, this episode that I'm doing will be the precursor to the football season. It's going to be before we jump into the season, the exciting NFL season this year. And I brought up those three quarterbacks just to prove and make a point. They're all NFL quarterbacks that happen to be African American. Yeah, it's one of those episodes, baby, where race and sports collide. You know I love to do that. So we're about to do it one more time. We're going to talk about the origins of the black quarterback in the NFL. We'll be right back. And I am the king, Dre Mack.
Tell the truth, nothing but the truth. So help you God say what you want to say. Don't be a fraud, King Dre, big pick, man. Against the odds, players play from May to May. Check out the pod, King Dre Mack and Big Pig. King Dre Mack and Big Pig. King Dre Mack and Big Pig. King Dre Mack. Big Pig.
Now let's talk about the role of the quarterback. I see it in many different ways. I played quarterback in high school. I know that it's a lot of responsibility that comes with the position. From the huddle, you have men looking at you for the answers, looking at you for motivation, looking at you to scold them, just looking at you for leadership. They come back from plays dinged up, maybe even hurt, and you have to convince them to keep on playing because it's for the betterment of the team. You got some people who want the ball often, and you got to convince them that you'll get it to them, and you're doing the right things with the facilitating that you're doing. You call audibles. You know all the play calls from the sideline. You know how to get into the 2-minute game when the game calls for that. You know what the defense is doing. You know what the offense is doing. You run the show. So at the end of the day, you're the captain of the team. No matter if they put the C on your chest or not, you're the captain because you play a position that always, every single play, touches the ball. You and the center touch the ball on every offensive snap. So it's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, and men have to believe in you in order for you to be an effective field general. And like I said, man, historically, black players, and a lot of you younger people that are listening to this, you're probably saying like, wait, why are you talking about black quarterbacks? We got plenty of black quarterbacks in the NFL. Well, there was a time, not that long ago, where that wasn't common. So we're going to walk back, way back, and talk about the origins of the black quarterback. And we're going to get to where we are today, where we still got work to do in this area. Quarterbacking and coaching, GMing, ownership. We already know the story there. But let's roll. Now, the quarterback, as a leader on that offense, directs players on the field. You know that. But historically, the black players had been excluded from playing quarterback in the NFL because it was a belief out there that white players would not follow the leadership, all the stuff that I just went over. They just didn't believe that a black quarterback could do that, could lead them through adversity, make them want to play, give them the motivation that's needed in order to win a football game. Because football, a lot of people say it's like war out there. I wouldn't take it that far, but I would say it's very physical. It tests you. It tests your mentality, tests your intestinal fortitude. Basically, if you're not tough, you shouldn't be out there playing. I know they changed a lot of rules recently, but it's still a fast-moving, high velocity, hard-hitting game. And if you're not ready, you can get your boots knocked out there. So back to what I was saying. The NFL believed, and the white players believed, they were kind of taught that the leadership qualities that black quarterbacks possessed weren't enough to get them over the hump. That the black quarterback lacked intelligence. He just wasn't smart. What was this based on? We'll get to that. Said that they didn't have dependability. Wasn't composed in the backfield like they had happy feet. Like the little penguin out there, like happy feet. Every time the rush would come, you get a little too excited and didn't know what to do with the ball. They just didn't have a character. The character, meaning they didn't seem like they were the face or the manager of the team, so they couldn't be the leader. Some of the same things that they say about Lamar Jackson or Cam Newton to this day. And then they used to say that they just didn't have that charisma that's needed in order to be the leader of the squad. And we know that's a damn lie for sure. But we'll move on past that. But many times back in the day, and I'm talking about from 1980s and below, just about, there were high school quarterbacks and college quarterbacks that were black that excelled at their position. I mean, they did well. And by the time they were drafted into the pros, the position that they played their college years was redirected. They were asked to play running back, asked to play wide receiver, things of that nature. So basically, they were great in college, but they couldn't be great in the pros based on these rules that were set up. And this kind of behavior from the NFL and other leagues before the NFL essentially banned the black players from the quarterback position. It was the last position in football to be desegregated. Yeah, they had segregated positions. I mean, just think how stupid that sounds. Well, let me backtrack. It don't sound too stupid, right? We see Kaepernick taking the knee and people just blew a gasket because he did that. Okay, so let's get back. So bottom line is this was the last position that was desegregated in the NFL. It's crazy to think that when you see the success that the black or African-American quarterbacks have on the game and the impact that they have on the game right now. I found it kind of funny also because we hear in the news right now that the Washington football team, formerly known as the Washington Redskins, they had to change their name due to the fact that Redskins name was derogatory. We know that. I mean, if it was the Washington Blackskins, we'd be mad as hell. But they had this, they rolled with it for several years. But that got me to kind of digging into that and kind of trying to understand where that name came from. And, looking up that for this podcast that I'm doing right now made me bump into the fact that in 1932, there was a segregationist named George Preston Marshall who founded a team called the Boston Braves. The following year, 1933, Marshall renamed the Braves to the Boston Redskins. And once he did that, he brokered an NFL-wide ban on black players, period. Not even just playing quarterback. He didn't want black players, period. Marshall moved the Boston Redskins to the southern city of Washington, D.C., which was still segregated, and renamed the team the Washington Redskins. That's some history for your ass right there. So when people talk about the Washington Redskins and renaming them and was it racist or was it just fun, think about who founded the team in the first place. A segregationist who banned all black players from the NFL. So this dude, George Preston Marshall, he had a so-called, what they called a gentleman's agreement that barred these black players from the NFL, and that lasted until after World War II, when there was a new league that launched in 1947 or 1946 as an unsegregated competing league. So when that league launched and they said, we're going to have all players. We don't care what color they are. It's a meritocracy. If they're good, they're good. They're playing. So that forced the NFL owners to lift that ban. And even though they lifted that ban in 1946, six-ish, this guy Marshall refused to sign any black players to the Redskins until 1962. 1962. And it took John F. Kennedy to threaten him to cancel the Redskins' 30-year stadium lease before he did that in 62. So we're going to get back to the Redskins and the significance of this team as I kind of like go through and hit a couple more plot points. But bookmark that. Washington Redskins. Okay, so let's talk about some of the OGs, man. Some of the G's that started off this whole ride that we're on right now with these amazing African-American quarterbacks that are, groundbreaking in the league right now. It's really something that I cherish. I really like seeing it. I really like seeing them in leadership positions and winning, man. That just makes me proud to see them out there playing. But how did it start? Well, it started with a guy way back in the day, when was this? Like 1923. A gentleman named Fritz Pollard. He was a figure in the formative days of the NFL. So he was there right at the beginning. He became the first black quarterback when he started playing a position for a team called the Hammond Pros in 1923. By that time, he had become the first black head coach as well in the NFL, and prior to his professional career, the first black quarterback All-American and the first to appear in the Rose Bowl. Of course, Pollard faced racism across his entire career. They had people in the stands when he would walk into the stadium yelling out, singing that song, Bye Bye Blackbird, calling him the N-word. They put bounties out on him, tried to break his arms, legs during the game. It was just tough out there for him. But Fritz was a very smart guy. He was a chemistry major, All-American at Brown University. Brown, if you don't know, is like an Ivy League school based in Rhode Island. I've been on the campus before. Very nice. He led the Akron Pros to the league's inaugural championship in 1920. So he was a baller. It was a little bit different back then because the quarterback didn't hardly throw the ball. They ran most of the time. So he was officially the quarterback, but it wasn't the modern quarterback position that we know and love today. And in fact, today's quarterback is much different than the 90s quarterback, which is different than the 80s and the 70s and the 60s quarterbacks. So the position and the game has evolved over time. It's more offensive. Nowadays, quarterbacks throwing 50 times a day. That was just like unheard of up until recently. So let's get back to the band. So after Fritz put it down, that's when the band came down from this dude, George Preston Marshall. He did an under-the-table gentleman's agreement that kind of bullied black people out of the game. And it wasn't unheard of back then. We know that. We had Jim Crow and other segregationist policies, and this was just another one of those policies. It was rooted in the beliefs that blacks were inferior, and that just underpinned segregation that was going around in regular society. They were saying, and this was from doctors, people who considered themselves doctors, that African Americans lacked the physical stamina and emotional courage to excel at contact sports. Wait a minute. Let me think about this. Is boxing a contact sport? Well, last time I checked, if you're getting hit upside your head, it's probably a contact sport. And I could be wrong, but history tells me that Jack Johnson was the best boxer, heavyweight boxer, at the turn of the century. So this had already been established that African Americans were very good at contact sports. So good that Jack Johnson was locked up, banned from boxing, and it took nearly 20 years for another African American to be able to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world. So anyway, that argument was refuted. That argument was thrown out of court, basically, in a court of opinion. So what was the new argument? The new argument had to be that, you know, African Americans were evolved. Yeah, they physically are evolved, but intellectually they are not. They're under-evolved. They're lower on the ladder of evolution. But to me, it sounds like a whole bunch of hate. We already know. We already know the deal. Jack Johnson already proved that. Told you Fritz was already in the game as a quarterback from day one. But you had to do something to hold these people back, to hold back the most coveted position in the NFL, quarterback. So the NFL had to lift that ban in 1946, and the opportunities for African-American quarterbacks were almost non-existent at this point. But then came George Taliaferro, who became the league's second ever black quarterback in 1950. Taliaferro made 3 Pro Bowls, but only as a rusher and a receiver, and he never completed more than 16 passes in a season because back then, like I said, the game was different. It evolved. It has evolved to what it is now, to where it's pass happy. 50 passes per day or per game is not unusual. But back then, they barely threw the rock. Taliaferro was one of those guys who made it to the Pro Bowl based on the way that the game was played back then. Second black quarterback in the league. Now, the third black quarterback, though, was a thrower. Oh, yeah, he was a thrower. He wasn't a passer, but he was a thrower. You probably saying, what the are you talking about? What do you mean he's a thrower but not a passer? Well, his last name was Thrower. His name was Willie Thrower. And Willie had probably the shortest leash that you've ever seen or ever heard of. So it was 1953 with the Chicago Bears put him in a game for one single drive against San Francisco 49ers. Thrower went 3 for 8, got his team into the red zone, and then came the hook. They pulled him up out the game, get on the sideline, and let George Blanda, icon in the game, take over in the red zone. So this would be the equivalent of somebody coming up to your job. Let's say if you worked at a factory and your manager told you, listen, you're going to have to bag up 100 chips in 30 minutes. The other guy got hurt. You got to fill in. Let's see if you can do it. If you can do it, you're going to get a full-time job. Right now, you're part-time. Here's your opportunity. So you go out there. You happy. Boom, 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 boom. You bagging them chips up, man. You doing your thing. You looking like a robot out there. Your boy, you're out there sweating. You got a little sweat beading up and everything. You're doing it. And then 25 minutes in, you're 90 bags deep. Here comes the manager. Stop. Hit the button. Like, you're like, what? Man, I'm almost done. I'm about to get this full-time job. We're going to go ahead and have John Smith replace you. He's going to go ahead and get us to 100 bags. You get back over there on part-time. Grab that broom, boy. Man. So you had to go get another job. You almost did it, but you got to go get another job. This is not your time. So that's basically how they did our guy, Willie Thrower. Put him in the game, let him drive, took him up out of there. Schmoove, deflug up out of there. So we're going to take a quick break. Thanks for listening to the King Dre Mac and the Big Pick Show. We're going to be right back. Hang on. So like I was saying, there were stereotypes for the black quarterback back in the day. And that led to some controversy over how white and black quarterbacks tend to be described in the media. It was not unheard of to hear announcers say, oh, that guy, he's so physical. Oh, he's got a gift from God. Oh, he's so fast. He runs like a cheetah. And that was the black quarterbacks or black athletes. But with the white, their white counterparts, you would hear, oh, he's so cerebral. He's a thinker. He's a general out there on the field. Many of the attributes that were given to the black athlete was more physical, God-given. For the white athlete, it was more intellectual and savvy. So this led to a study, an empirical study that was published in the Howard Journal of Communications, and it supported this hypothesis. The researchers analyzed the written descriptions of quarterbacks that were prospects in the NFL draft, and they took a section out of Sports Illustrated website from 1998 up until 2007. They looked at each player's descriptions for words or phrases about athleticism and intelligence and sorted them into categories based on whether they were positive or negative. A significant difference was found between how black and white quarterbacks are described by Sports Illustrated. Black quarterbacks tend to be praised, like I said, for their athleticism and criticized for their lack of intelligence. Like they would say, oh, that was a kind of a bonehead play. Oh, he should have did this, should have did that. So they're coaching from the box on what that quarterback should have done. However, quarterbacks that were white were often praised for their intelligence and criticized for a lack of athleticism. So it was flip-flopped in that example. So this was a study that, I didn't have to see this study in order to verify that because I lived it. I listened to enough games to know. Like you can go back and listen to footage of Howard Cosell back in the day. I remember I forget the guy's name, but he caught a punt and he ran the punt back, and Howard Cosell basically called him a little monkey running up the field. Jimmy the Greek, who said that black athletes were strong because they had a big mammy and a big pappy and they put them together and they made big, strong babies. So that was the thinking. This is 1970s when they were saying, 70s and 80s when they were saying these things. So it's not lost on me that this sort of thought or ideas were circulating around the NFL at this time. That also led to, people casting dispersions on black athletes because of the Wonderlic test. And the Wonderlic test is that so-called intelligent test that a lot of quarterbacks and, put it this way, a lot of NFL players take, but quarterbacks and centers and interior linemen usually score higher on it on average. And in one specific instance during the NFL Combine, I won't say specific instance. I'll say during the NFL Combine, players are given this test, and the test is to kind of measure their mental aptitude. And quarterbacks, they say, and this is as of 2018, score about 30.7 on average. So the average Super Bowl winning quarterbacks score about 30.7 on average, which is pretty high given the fact that a score of 22 is average around the league. And the position average is about 24. So the position average being quarterbacks that haven't won the Super Bowl. So the list of winning quarterbacks, including Russell Wilson at this point, got a score of 28. So Russell scored pretty high. Even though the average is about 30.7, he scored 28. And it was found that a guy like Donovan McNabb and Jim Kelly scored 15. And they had long and successful careers in the NFL, and both went to the Super Bowl, but they didn't win. But it wasn't the fault of these athletes that they lost, and it damn sure wasn't determined on the fact that they got a lower score on the Wonderlic test. So a lot of these tests were used against athletes to try to draw that line between athleticism and intellectualism. Sad, but this was part of the league and still is a common thread in the league. So let's go back to Willie Thrower, though. Remember Willie? He was the third black quarterback in the NFL. And it seems as that after he got out of the league, he opened up a bar, and he called the bar the Touchdown Lounge. Had a picture up on the wall. First black quarterback in the NFL, 1953. So technically, he could say he was the first black quarterback in the NFL because the two quarterbacks that came before him weren't technically in the NFL. They were in leagues that were prior to the NFL, but they were the pro league for football at that point. So technically he was, but he had the picture up there saying he was the first black quarterback in the NFL. And many people were like, damn, you lying. That ain't you. Take the picture down. You wasn't the first black quarterback. So he got a lot of flack for that. But I wanted to go back on Willie Thrower to reiterate that point, that although he got one play in, he was technically the quarterback. Coolest name. Willie Thrower. You can't beat that. Unless your name was like Pedro Passer, you can't beat Willie Thrower, man. So Willie is the guy. Let him have his piece. He had his one play. He was officially the quarterback. Now, let's talk about another sociological phenomenon called racial stacking. It's defined as a sorting process in which individuals are funneled into certain positions based on stereotypes. So this could be something that we can classify what's happened to the black quarterback in the 20s up through the 70s and 80s, from Pop Warner to the NFL and down the middle of the positions between center and side linebacker, etc. On the defensive side of the ball, defensive backs, running backs, wide receivers. But when it comes to quarterback, that was considered the spot where you had to be intellectual and you had to be able to think. You had to be cerebral. You had to be able to think on your feet. You couldn't panic. You had to have heart. All of those things that weren't attributed to black athletes at that point made it very hard for a black athlete coming from high school and college as a star quarterback to make it into the pros. Didn't make any sense. But nevertheless, stacking had a kind of a two-pronged effect. It reduced the pool of African-American college quarterbacks because high school quarterbacks were encouraged to change positions when they got into the college ranks. Great receiver like James Lofton. Look him up. Amazing athlete. Tony Hill, another great receiver, played for the Dallas Cowboys. Both were high school quarterbacks in the LA area. Both, when they went to college, were converted into different positions. They went on to have successful careers, but they were quarterbacks back in the day. They had the arm, had the intelligence, and I don't know if Tony Hill made the Hall of Fame, but I think James Lofton is in the Hall of Fame. So these guys were great at what they did, but they were converted over because of this racial funneling or racial stacking, as they termed it. Ironically, there was a guy who went to school with James Lofton in college, and they said that they would have a contest in practice to see who could throw the ball the longest or just throw the ball the furthest, and James Lofton would always win. Had an arm, rocket arm, but never got the chance to use it because of this racial funneling. So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the first African-American quarterback to play in the modern league. Hang on. The Denver Broncos drafted Marlin Briscoe in 1968. Briscoe was a star quarterback at Omaha University. Had arm, had charisma, had style, was a leader. What could go wrong? Marlin had all that it took in order to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. So why was it that when he came out to practice, they didn't put the red jersey on him that the quarterbacks would wear? They told him to get on the defensive side of the ball. He's a defensive back now. So Marlin's nickname in college was the Magician. So he pulled some magic on the Denver Broncos because he's told them that I'm not signing with you unless you allow me to participate in the quarterback tryouts at the start of training camp. This was crazy talk back then because there wasn't a black quarterbacks playing, especially in the modern NFL. You see, Briscoe grew up idolizing people like Johnny Unitas, who is similar to Joe Montana or similar to a Tom Brady. He didn't grow up idolizing running backs and wide receivers. So this is the position that he wanted to play. This is the position that he thought he earned for his tryout. And when he got there, they just said, get on the other side of the ball and didn't give him an opportunity. So they gave him that opportunity, along with 7 other quarterbacks, all of them white. He got to make 10 throws during the drills. He always went last during those drills, and he didn't get 10 balls to throw. He said he threw about 8 balls each time. So at the end of the camp that he participated in to see if he could make it as a quarterback, so after some going back and forth, the eventual starter got hurt, and that gave Briscoe his opportunity to start. The first black quarterback to start a game in an American major professional football league in 1968. The modern game is what I'm saying. So that season, Briscoe threw for 1,589 yards. He broke the Broncos' single-season rookie touchdown record with 14 and finished second in the Rookie of the Year voting. Regardless, it became clear that Denver would no longer play him at quarterback. So Briscoe had to ask for his release. So no good deed, this is a lesson, no good deed goes unpunished. Went out there and served him on the field, but ended up having to get his walking papers. And he got his papers because the brass or the people in the office thought that the fans would have backlash against him continuing to play, that he would get the player backlash from his own players, and that whites would just not play for a black quarterback or root for a black quarterback. Well, it's on the record that Briscoe thought that was a myth. He said with his own words that his offensive line, they were all from the South. Not only had they never played for a black quarterback, but prior to the pros, they had never played with black players. And even though, in saying all that, when he went to them, the first things that came out of their mouths was, "Don't let him touch the magician." They loved Marlon Briscoe. So even though the league was pushing, the front office was pushing to get him up out of there, the players loved him. And there were white players that loved him. So sports is a great thing, man. It's a meritocracy out there. If you're good and people know you got it, you got that it, they want to roll with that. They want to be part of that, no matter what color you are. So Briscoe had that it, but the it wasn't good enough to the front office, so he had to get it up out of there, which led him to another team and then leads us to another African-American football player that played quarterback along the way. His name was James Shaq Harris. He was Briscoe's roommate and his mentee when he got sent over to the Buffalo Bills. So Briscoe was over at Buffalo Bills, met the guy, James Shaq Harris, and he gave him some game. So during the NFL season opener that year, James Shaq Harris started for the Buffalo Bills. He started, he won a playoff game, and he played in the Pro Bowl, and he was selected as the Pro Bowl MVP. First time on all levels. Everything I named was a first-time thing that James Shaq Harris put down. Amazing stuff, man. Now, y'all remember when I started this, I talked about George Preston Marshall, that, the racist dude that owned the Washington Redskins. Yeah, the team that's now the Washington football team. So let's not forget that. So I bring them up to get to the next quarterback in 1978, a Mr. Doug Williams, who became the first black quarterback to be selected in the NFL draft's first round. Doug Williams was a factor. I remember when he played for Tampa Bay. I was a young boy then, younger, but I knew stats. He was throwing up 300, 400-yard games back then when passing wasn't as commonplace as it is now. He was throwing up yards, man, throwing the deep ball. Straight out of Grambling, throwing that deep ball, though, man. Great receivers on the outside. Big dude. Smart. He's coaching right now. I think he coaches for Grambling right now. Definitely a cerebral guy. And ironically, 9 years after he got drafted into the league in the first round, he made history again by winning the Super Bowl for the Washington Redskins. Damn. Don't karma come back around and bite you in your ass sometimes? Racist dude puts out these bad vibes, banning black players across the league, and then the first black player to ever win a Super Bowl won it for the team that guy owned. I love it when that stuff happens, man. Like, for real. I remember when that happened, I was proud because Doug wasn't even the starter. He wasn't the starter during the year, man. And I believe the quarterback that was starting got hurt, and Doug subbed in, and he ended up getting on a run and jumped into the Super Bowl and rode it all the way to the bank, man. Doug was a groundbreaker. Speaking of groundbreakers, the CFL, Canadian Football League, although we look at it today, and you probably don't even look at it today, it's one of those leagues where, you're turning through channels. You might go through ESPN and whatnot, and you'll see football being played on the screen, and you see the team names, and you're like, Argonauts, like, what are we talking about here? What Is this where they playing? So you realize that Canada has a thriving football league. Those players over there getting paid. They definitely get paid, and it serves as like a minor leagues for the NFL. But one of the things that I give the CFL a lot of credit for is the fact that they gave black quarterbacks an opportunity when the NFL did not. Canada was open to black quarterbacks to start professionally, play professional football, even in the 50s, all the way throughout. So I give Canada praise for that, and I like Canada. I mean, Canada's one of those places, man, if you've never been, get up there. You know, I've been to Vancouver, been to Montreal, Toronto. Man, it's clean. It's just like the U.S., very clean. You know, not a lot of, in Toronto got black culture there. Montreal does as well, got that French side to it. Vancouver, not so much, but I do like Vancouver very much. Beautiful, beautiful town. But they all got football teams. They all should be given credit for giving the black quarterback the opportunity to develop his skills and not have to convert to be a wide receiver or a running back or a defensive back. So I give him credit for that. And one of the gems and the diamonds that was formed in the CFL was Mr. Warren Moon. Warren Moon. Man, Warren Moon, factor. Major factor. Played 5. Well, let me back that up. Warren Moon went undrafted out of college after winning the Rose Bowl for the University of Washington. The winning quarterback, undrafted, like nobody touched Warren Moon. This shows you just how bad the league had to be and the perception of the black quarterback and his intellectualism and just his leadership qualities. He won the Rose Bowl, went through the entire draft, didn't get drafted, had to go to the CFL. It was like a punishment to go to the CFL, but he did that. Went there, won 5 straight championships in Canada, 5 straight Super Bowls in Canada. And they play some good football up there. And he won 5 of them until the NFL then came calling because he had a favorable organization and a favorable coach who put him in a position to play what they called back then the run and shoot, which is similar to what we call now the spread offense. Warren was eating them up, man. Warren would eat them up. He got into the Houston Oilers, man, and was prolific. Warren had 17 years in the NFL. 17 years. Had 5 in the CFL, 17 in the NFL. 22 years combined. Prolific statistics. I mean, he's up there. Hall of Famer. First black quarterback to become a Pro Football Hall of Famer. And they didn't believe in him at the beginning. Not at all. Not because he wasn't great. Not because he wasn't a winner. Not because he wasn't a leader. But, man, the elephant in the room is because he was African American and the league just did not see that as a possibility for a team leader. But Warren showed them. See, Warren was a pass-first quarterback. It was a rap on black quarterbacks that they couldn't stay in the pocket. They couldn't throw under pressure, that they would take off running. So this led to a lot of the quarterbacks that we've seen before this wave that we've had recently where people didn't want to go to the camps and run the 40 if you were playing quarterback because you didn't want to be converted to a wide receiver. If they saw you running a 4-4, 4-3, oh no, let's take him from under the center and put him out there on the wing. Let's put him behind the quarterback. So the African-American quarterback had to fight through a lot of conceptions. It was conceptions out there that they just couldn't do it. Warren Moon was one of those guys who I love to watch play because he could fling that ball, man. Could fling it out there on outs, post passes, throw under pressure, play that 2-minute game, no huddle. He could do it all. Like Warren was a player, a real player, man. I really dug Warren Moon. OG right there. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the stereotypes and the modern day quarterbacks that we see out in the field today. We'll be back. So, the rise of the black quarterbacks created the idea of the white quarterback. It was sad. So before it was a stereotype that emerged that black quarterbacks were athletic, there were no distinctive characteristics associated with the white quarterbacks. Especially when you saw Randall Cunningham and Michael Vick hit the league. And this started to change a lot of attitudes towards the black quarterback with their ability to run. But not to say that there weren't white quarterbacks that could run. Like Fran Tarkenton was known as a runner. Steve Young was also seen as a runner, but they weren't necessarily seen as athletic. They were just seen as, they could get and scramble out of trouble. So the league started to change. Passing became more and more of a big deal, and the defensive side of the ball got so big and so fast and so ferocious that they had to start changing a lot of the rules of the game. And those quarterbacks that sit back in the pocket, like a Tom Brady, for instance, versus somebody who can get out of there, like a Russell Wilson or a Patrick Mahomes, it started to shape a new narrative in the league. It was starting to be okay to be able to get up out of there and get out of the pocket and make a pass play or just run for a first down and get your team into position to score. At the college levels, there were more and more black quarterbacks in the 90s and 2000s. It became commonplace to see an African-American football player playing quarterback to start national championship games and win them. So the league's mentality or the stereotypes that once plagued the black quarterback started to be lifted a bit with the Michael Vicks and the Randall Cunninghams of the world. And then we saw injuries. I remember the injuries that happened with Joe Montana in particular. I remember he got knocked smooth the look out the game. And I remember him, Steve Young, coming in after that and being able to move around and run. And it was almost as if they didn't care that Joe was gone because they had somebody who could get out of the way and not get hurt as much. So it was a really big push to, find people who could think on their feet, and brick by brick and step by step, we're getting to the point that we are at now with these great NFL quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, to name a few. It's been a long time coming. But still, there are issues out there. The short hook, for instance. There's data out there that shows that black quarterbacks are roughly 2 times more likely to get benched than their white peers when it comes to playing a quarterback position. So you have a shorter leash. You get out there, you mess up in a couple situations, that hook is coming for your neck, pulling you up out of the game. But things are starting to get better now. We're seeing more black athletes and black quarterbacks, black thinkers, black intellectuals out there playing this game. It's taking generations and a legacy of racial ideology. Some of that stuff manifests itself in people getting upset about Kaepernick taking a knee. Some of it manifests itself in the fact that they just want you to shut up, play the game, and talk football speak. When's the last time you heard a football player say anything but, I played the game the right way, we're doing all we can do to win the ball game? They can't talk, hardly. If they are, they're punished. So it's a very robotic, very militaristic type of game. But under that facade and under the surface of that, there's 70% African American out there playing that game on the field. So there needs to be, that position of quarterback needs to be represented as well. You need to have black athletes, thinkers, and intellectuals playing that position. Coaches, GMs, ownership. Think about this. Remember when Lamar Jackson got drafted? Y'all remember when he got drafted? There was an NFL executive, Bill Polian, who suggested that the youngest ever Heisman Trophy winner, let me say that again, the youngest ever Heisman Trophy winner that played quarterback in college should change positions and play receiver in the pros. This was recent. This ain't a long time ago. This is why people get upset, because we're watching this very closely. We're sitting on pins and needles when we see somebody like Lamar make it, and on his, he gets drafted to play quarterback, and then you got people still saying he should switch positions. And we've seen this story before. We've heard this story before. We've lived this before. So when we hear it, don't get upset that we're upset off top, that we seem like we're a little bit hot, because all this other stuff has happened before that. So no matter if you meant harm or not, if you don't know your history, you could run into a buzzsaw. So it was good to see that Lamar Jackson took that in stride. Obviously, he did not switch positions. People raised concerns that he couldn't read defenses. He did the right thing by not running a 40-yard dash for scouts, because he was going to come in at 4.3. We know that by watching him play. And he opened that season throwing 5 touchdown passes, killed Miami 59-10. And then I remember when he came out and said, when they asked him questions about the game, he said, not bad for a running back. That was a slap in the face of those that said he needed to switch positions. So that's cool, man, that we're seeing the position evolve the way that it has. I got my eyes wide open. I'm always looking to see players come in and do their things. I remember I had all the jerseys for black quarterbacks back in the 2000s. I had one of them was Donovan McNabb. I remember that very well, and I remember all the flack that Donovan McNabb took from one Rush Limbaugh. I'm not going to say too much about a dead man, but I'll say it wasn't cool. Some of the things that he said about Donovan McNabb. Basically, thought that he was getting preferential treatment because he was black as a quarterback, which makes no damn sense. No damn sense. If you knew the history of the league, you would know. But I know the history of Rush Limbaugh, so I already know where he was coming from with that. Donovan went on to have a pretty damn good career. Proud of the contributions that Donovan put down, especially coming after Mr. Randall Cunningham. So Randall put it down. Donovan came behind him. So Philly gets love from me just for doing that 1-2 step right there. Michael Vick came along, changed the game. He just didn't run. He was like, pew, 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 with an arm. Had arm, it could run his ass off. Now we look at some of the players that are in place that are doing their things. We got Cam Newton winning MVP. Steve McNair won an MVP. Pat Mahomes, MVP. Lamar, MVP. Amazing to see, man. We've had 5,000-yard passers. Remember when I talked about right from the beginning, Fritz Pollard, who barely threw the ball. Talked about Briscoe, Marlon Briscoe, who threw 1,500 yards in a season and almost won Rookie of the Year. We got 5,000-yard passers now. Patrick Mahomes did it in 2018. And then we had Jameis Winston do it in 2019. So we've come a long way in this position, and we need to represent it very well. This is why I'm kind of tight when it comes to that position. I want them to be in a position of leadership, guide their team, lead their team, and show everybody against all odds that they're winners. So I'm going to name them off. Here's all the playoff starters since 1974 that were black quarterbacks. James Harris, Randall Cunningham, Dante Culpepper, Aaron Brooks, Steve McNair, rest in peace, Quincy Carter, Doug Williams, Cordell Stewart, Warren Moon, Sean King, Michael Vick, David Gerard, Donovan McNabb, Cam Newton, Robert Griffin Jr., Russell Wilson, Colin Kaepernick, big ups, Teddy Bridgewater, Dak Prescott, Tyrod Taylor, Deshaun Washington, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. And there's been 3 that have won the big game. And we know that's Doug Williams, won it in Washington. We know that's Patrick Mahomes. We know that's Russell Wilson. We know that Steve McNair and Donovan McNabb and Colin Kaepernick and Cam Newton all made it. They didn't get over the hump, but we still got action. I am the king, Dre Mack. I'm out. Peace.
Tell the truth, nothing but the truth. So help you guys say what you want to say. Don't be a fraud. King Dre, big pick, man. Against the odds, players play from May to May. Check out the pod. King Dre Mack and Big Pick. King Dre Mack and Big Pick. King Dre Mack and Big Pick. King Dre Mack and Big Pick.